Hi again, it's Sandra Alexander, speech therapist, mother of somebody with autism, talking to you more about instructional methods. And we just briefly touched before on discrete trials, and this is another part two of discrete trial instruction. So let's enjoy this. We focused before on what it was and how it's a useful method to break behaviors down in discrete pieces or to small pieces. And focuses on isolated responses. So essentially, you get to give your learner multiple practice opportunities, and after each response, they get reinforcement, possibly a break and a little break, and then they go and do it again. So they get lots of opportunities to practice, and then going on to the next trial, and then presented the opportunity to learn. And we're going to now learn about task. What is a task interspersal? Let me say that again, task interspersal. And it's the inclusion of a previously learned skill mix into a practice section of novel or new materials. So why use this? Well, it permits the learner to engage in a previously mastered task so they don't forget it. So if they now can touch red, you have them touch red and next go blue, touch red, then blue. So they can still maintain that skill, and they should be able to do the interspersal task at 100%. So they do it all the time and they get access to lots of reinforcers because they already have it, which helps them be motivated to learn the new thing. So if we incorporate interspersal into the programming, they should be doing more correct responses even for the newer task. Research has also backed this up, that there's a higher percentage of correct responding on the acquisition of new tasks because of interspersal, and it was compared in a study in 1980 by Dunlap and Cagle. Interspersal must include maintenance tasks, and just interspersing several newer tasks, it's not as good because they're not mastered, so they won't always get it right. It's important that they be motivated to perform, and if they're always right, because you've interspersed something they know, it helps with motivation. So you get a higher percentage of correct responding, and it includes maintenance tasks, like I just said. So why should we use these? Well, we discussed that a little bit just a second ago, but here's an example of a task. The interspersal would be accurately collects a napkin and places it on the table. So the student can do that. The try would be accurately retrieves it from the drawer, places a fork at a table setting is the interspersal. So they can get the napkin, place the fork. You're trying to teach the person to get the item from the drawer. Trial 2 gets a spoon from a drawer. The interspersal puts it on the table. Trial 3 accurately gets a knife, places it on the table. So remembering that an interspersal, the child should be able to perform it at 100% accuracy every time, okay? So it gives them more access to reinforcement. The researcher has demonstrated, in addition, research has demonstrated a higher percentage of correct responding on acquisition tasks when maintenance tasks are put in, like we discussed earlier. And it also should help with a little generalization, which will be talked about next. But generalizing a skill is being able to take something you've learned and doing it in a different environment so that you can set the table in your house and then go and do that, let's say, in a restaurant or in some other house. This is more naturalistic, and it prevents automatic responding from previous repeated trials. And there's more opportunities for reinforcement. Now let's talk a little bit about errorless learning. I think we'd all like that. So we're trying to prevent errors so that more success is more motivation. It uses a most to least prompt hierarchy, which we'll talk about a little here We interrupt errors to stop them occurring. So if mistakes are made, failure to move, it might be in this, if mistakes happen and you make errors when doing errorless learning, it may mean that your prompt level isn't low enough. The child might need more help to prevent the error. Or if you provide too much assistance too long, then the child becomes dependent on this. Let's delve a little further here. Remember, we're trying to prevent errors. And when implementing errorless learning, a most to least is used. So, for example, the most prompt you can give somebody is hand over hand. So if you want them to touch red, you take their hand, you touch red. They can't make a mistake because you're helping them that much, okay? And then you might fade that off. You may end up touching their elbow, which would be a level below hand over hand. But also, if an error is occurring, you want to interrupt it. So that way they know, uh-oh, this isn't right. So when providing so you're going to, let's say, uh-oh, stop here. And you can even interrupt in a less invasive way, but first more invasive. And then sometimes you may go from stop to a look on your face, for example. You should always want to try to stop the learner from performing an error response so they don't learn the error response and not get the motivation they need to learn more, basically. You normally do that at the start of an error response. So effective instructional techniques. So when instructing a child, it's important to gain the child's attention. And if they're not attending, because you can't learn if you're off somewhere else, start simple, prompt errorless learning, provide consequences immediately so they know that they've gotten it right. You could take a brief break between tasks, but that's normally 0 to 3 seconds. Vary your tasks with interspersals and plan for generalization. You want your child to be able to, let's say, make their bed in their house, but also make their bed if they're visiting a friend's house, for example. So here's an example of a DTI program. If you were working on somebody identifying objects, you can set up a place, plan the target behaviors. We're going to identify, let's say, a cup and a spoon and a plate, put into distractors in front of the student, and then you first want to establish that they're paying attention, and then you present the prompt or the discrete prompt, touch the object, the student will touch the stated object. And you go from most to least as far as the prompt. So you may need to do hand over hand, and you do that a few times. And then you say, touch the object, and you may touch their hand. So you can do full physical, partial physical contact, and then no prompt. You can reinforce through social praise like good job, or a pre-selected reward that the student likes, and do an error correction standard. And here's a sample data sheet. Receptive ID of objects, you say touch the, it looks a lot like the sheet we saw in previous webinars. So I hope this clears up a little bit about another instructional technique for your children with autism if you're doing ABA. And always ask questions of your teacher if you don't understand, and you can look things up. Thanks for watching. Bye.